left. Lifelong fulfillment, vision in action. You left. Lifelong fulfillment, vision in action. Live.
Good morning and welcome to Vision in Action Live. On the Vision in Action Live podcast, we focus on expert knowledge and solutions that facilitate individual personal development. These are the disciplines that allow you to construct and pursue your complete vision of your best authentic life. To do this, we bring you experts in every conceivable specialty to help inform your thinking about your own journey toward lifelong fulfillment. So I'm Jim Boswell, I'm your host today, and I'm the author of Lifelong Fulfillment, Take Charge of Your Life, and its companion website and this podcast. Joining us today is Chris Pratt. He's a certified functional nutritionist, a podcaster himself, a natural health educator, and the founder of the Plant Adventure and the Healing Conspiracy. He leads the rally of community to fight chronic illness naturally and to promote longevity. Welcome, Chris. We're glad to have this opportunity to hear what you have to tell us.
Hey, Jim, thank you so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Well, personally, it's a little worrying because I'd hate to find out all the foods and things that I eat are going to be bad for me. But hey, we'll take the risk. Okay.
All right. I'll be easy on you today.
Okay, good. So maybe you can tell us how you wound up in the nutrition space and then what a functional nutritionist does and is, how that focus works.
Sure. So I kind of stumbled into the nutritional space kind of out of necessity. I was a public educator for most of my career. I was a teacher, a band director, in fact. And about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way into my journey of being a band director, I started to develop some health complications. I will admittedly say, and Jim, this may make you feel a little better, I was a junk food junkie. I was literally on the standard American diet, quote unquote, which is really sad because it's nothing but processed food and nothing but, fast food and restaurants. And, my schedule was crazy. I would work 60 hours a week and, there's just not time to take care of your health. You've got work to do, right?
Right.
And that caught up to me really quickly. And so I actually developed some spots of skin cancer, one over my eyebrow and one behind my ear. And I ignored them for a really long time, which I don't recommend, until the point where I couldn't ignore them anymore. So went and had a Mohs surgery, had them removed, and everything was seemingly good after that. Now, I will interject that Mohs surgery was very traumatic for me. They had to go many, many layers of removing my skin to get to the end of the cancer. And so it was in all of that I was doing some research and trying to figure out, because I'll be honest, it didn't really set extremely well with me that the sun gave me cancer. And the reason for that is, although I am white and I do sunburn, that's kind of the narrative we've always heard. But it did make sense to me that the very thing in the sky that we all need to live also kills you. And so it was like this weird paradigm. And so I just started doing a whole lot of studying prior to my surgeries. And what I discovered was that nutrition plays a really big role in the development of cancer. And whenever I evaluated the two, I figured I've spent way more time eating poorly than I have been in the sun. So I kind of went 2 + 2 = 4. And you know what? I think maybe it's my diet. And so I would ask around, I would ask some different doctors and things, and, they didn't really want to say much about it. But the physician assistant to my Mohs surgeon, we were kind of in a room waiting on the doctor, and we were chit-chatting, and I just boldly said, you know what? I don't think that I have this cancer because of the sunburns. I think it's my diet. And she literally got really quiet, and then she said, I think you're right. She said, and she was an African woman. And, and of course, so she doesn't fit the narrative of getting sunburns and all that kind of stuff. She said, I have melanoma on my foot. She goes, and there is no way on earth I got that from sunburns because I don't sunburn and I sure don't sunburn on my foot. And she said, and I think it's my diet too. And I've been doing the same research. And so it was kind of like this weird confirmation that there was a medical professional out there and they were kind of seeing what I was talking about. And so with all of that, I went through the surgeries and I really had kind of a spiritual moment with all of that. Really was crying out to God because I had to have reconstructive surgery and that didn't take. And it was just a big hot mess. And at that point, I was really asking God, I was like, why is this happening? Like, I don't want it to continue. Like, what do I need to change? And I really knew at that moment that God told me it's your diet. And so I made a stark change. I said, if it is my diet, I'm going to do everything the exact opposite of what I'm doing. And so I went from processed food to fast food to restaurants, and I ate a primarily carnivorous diet. I don't think I ever ate vegetables at all, and maybe some fruit just because it was laying around, but it wasn't intentional.
Right.
So I switched and I became 100% plant-based. And with that was a learning curve, and I had to learn how to kind of make it enjoyable and make good food. But um, I started to immediately see health benefits. Like within 3 months, I lost 60 pounds without even exercising and started to feel more energetic, started to feel better, and started to really kind of enjoy what I was doing. And so that's kind of how I stumbled into this space. And then with time and with study, realized like I want to be able to help other people avoid the problems that I have. Or maybe if they have issues, then I could certainly be a hope to them and really kind of help them in their journey to do everything they can. Because I truly believe that God designed our bodies that if we give the right environment, they can heal themselves. It may take time. I spent, 30 plus years eating horrible. So I can't expect to be healed in a week, right? Uh, but at the same time, I do believe that it's possible. And so that kind of brings me to a functional nutritionist. A functional nutritionist is someone who really works with food to heal the body and to use it to create an environment of health and well-being. So of course it's not a guarantee, and you can't just say, well, eat some blueberries and you're going to be healed. It doesn't work like that. But it's about looking at the big picture and using food as medicine, like Hippocrates said. Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food.
Mhm. Okay. Uh, so you're totally plant-based in your approach on this, right?
Great question. So I personally am totally plant-based.
Right.
However, after kind of going through my courses and learning so much about the body and the various needs of the body, I do not believe there is a one size fits all. And so, although I am plant-based, and if someone wants to try that, I love to dive in and teach them how to do that really successfully. But I don't necessarily recommend that with all my people that I work with because that may not be the very best thing for them. And I think
Mhm.
that it's a matter of eating whole foods. I think that it's a matter of eating things that aren't processed and then pinpointing the things that each person needs individually. So, although I am plant based, I don't necessarily create programs that are strictly plant based.
Okay. Okay. Um, I had a couple of observations about that, and one was, uh, that, we kind of grew up in the wild as omnivores, right? And so to some extent, it's part of our makeup to have a little bit of the meat in there with everything else. The other was I had a similar instance of colon cancer and went through a dietitian approach to that. And mine wasn't quite so drastic, but it was a lot of tweaks on moving away from red meat to fish and chicken and things like that. Um, and of course, you lose some nutrients by doing such a thing. So you have to kind of readjust your thinking about it. And I've never been, really big on, green leafy things. But generally, we cooked more than we had in the past. Not that we weren't cooking quite a bit then, but we just increased that and started staying away from processed foods and restaurants and stuff like that. So what you're saying kind of resonates with me too, and I feel the better for having made the change.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
So, Chris, does that include what are your thoughts about supplements in addition to that? I mean, I take a few basic things. What does your approach, think about that?
Sure. Supplements is like this really tricky topic because the supplement world is like the wild, wild west. It's not necessarily regulated by the FDA. And so you can have a bottle of, said thing, and it could have all kinds of things in it that you don't know that are in it. And even with multivitamins, I know most people, they're like, oh, you need to take a multivitamin every day. And the research is starting to come out that actually those things, they basically have no nutrition in them, and they're really just uh, filler for the most part. And, I mean, I'm not going to speak to everyone, but man, you've got to do your research. I think when it comes to supplements, you have to really, really vet those things. I am an advocate of some supplements. I think that when a supplement can be whole food, plant-based, I think that's when you're probably on the right track. With the exception of there's a couple of supplements as well, like bone broth. I think that that can be very powerful if it's coming from a good source. Maybe collagen, things like that for some people is very helpful. But for the most part, one of the things I look for, and it's hard to find, um, is if you can get a whole food plant-based supplement that has a nutrition label on it. See, the supplement label, it's very less regulated than a nutritional label. And the
Hmm.
supplement label means that there are things in it that are processed or synthetic. If it has a nutritional label, then it had to have been vetted to say there is no added ingredient other than food in this bottle. And so to me, when you can really vet that, and I'll be honest, there are very few on the market, very few. And if that's something that people are interested in, I would be happy to share, some of those. This may not be the time or place, but I think that's one of the main things that you've really got to look for because you want to know what's going in your body.
Hmm. What about the issue of just buying groceries, say normal groceries, normal plant foods versus the organic labels?
Yeah. You know, that's another great question. Personally, I would say buy organic when you can. There's a list you can go online and just type in the dirty dozen foods,
Hmm.
and it'll be fruits and vegetables that tend to have the very most pesticides. I know there, things like strawberries. It's the things with the really thin skins, right? And they
Hmm.
tend to carry the most pesticides. So especially with those, if you can really, try to buy organic. Um, for example, avocados, the avocado skin is so thick that they've really determined that nothing really penetrates it. So, I mean, you can buy organic avocados if you want, but that's probably not one of the ones I would really insure,
Hmm.
with the thinner flesh, fruits and vegetables, I think would be more important. So, I'm an advocate of organic. I think that it's powerful if you can do that. It is a little more expensive. I wouldn't say it's a lot more expensive. You kind of got to pick your battles. We try to buy organic as much as we can, but of course, there are certain things that we don't. So yeah, I think that that is definitely a bonus if you can do organic, but I still think you're better off getting fruits and vegetables and plants into your body for their value. And even though there may be, trace things we don't want, I think with
Hmm.
a good wash, we can kind of say the benefits outweigh the problems at this point.
Right, right. Okay, so if I'm someone out there who's struggling with some of the issues you and I have brought up, and I'm needing information, my observation was even when I was asking these questions that unless I got a certified nutritionist to talk to, I really wasn't going to get a lot of straight answers. Uh, it was kind of like not my job or, yeah, no, I don't know anybody, things like that. Once I got to a nutritionist, I got pretty much straight ahead information. And it was kind of hybridized, in my opinion, between strictly a full-on vegan plant-based diet or, modifying the old US food pyramid. And so it was a kind of a middle ground that they felt comfortable with. They were not going to recommend a radical solution to me. That's kind of what I thought. So I'm curious about, how do you work with people? Do you do strictly educational videos like we're doing here to some extent? Or do you take on one-on-one consulting? How do you get this information, which is really important, into people's hands?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently I'm working on building a library of information as well as a library of um, basically recipes and how to do this. Because I think for a lot of people that it's maybe one of the biggest barriers to entry is they just don't know what to do and how to prepare things. And so I'm working on building that library. It takes
Mhm.
time, but I do work with people one on one, and that's probably the most powerful thing I've got right now because I really sit down. We talk about your history, the things that you grew up as, and just so I can kind of get a picture of where you are, and then we talk about any health challenges that you may have. Some people come to me and maybe they wouldn't have any health challenges; they just want to be preventative. Okay, that's great. But some
Mhm.
people have some specific things and we kind of come up with a goal, like one goal, and we say, we're going to set our sights on getting you here over the next 8 weeks. And then we work together and I develop a customized meal plan, shopping list, and things like that to really kind of take the guesswork out of it so that it becomes easy to say, like, okay, here's what I do. But in the process, the goal is that you learn to be self-sufficient and you learn to be autonomous so that now I can go in the kitchen. I don't even need a recipe because I get the general principle of like, I need to get these in my body, and here's a great way to mix them up and make it happen.
Right. Okay. Uh, there's some impact to this also for those that live with us, right?
Oh, yeah.
For instance, in my household, my wife is the health nut among the two of us. And so, I pay attention. I'm exposed to it a lot. It has, I think, maybe some direct influence, but also it has some indirect influence on what I do, when I do it, that sort of thing. How about for you?
Well, I am definitely the health warrior in my family.
Okay.
Oftentimes too much frustration. Because in my family, not with anybody else, but in my family, everything that gets touched, I'm like, do you know what that has in it? Do you know that you shouldn't be eating that? Like I But my wife did not really grow up as in as bad of a eating culture as I did. She lived in a very rural area. They had a farm, and so she's very accustomed to eating, healthier foods.
Right.
However, early in our marriage, when she first met me, I took her to the dark side. And so
Oh,
and now she's literally addicted to so many things, and we talk about it all the time. And she'll say, like, it is so hard because, emotionally I'm addicted to it. Like, there's just this thing that happens. And so we have three small kids, 10, 7, and 5. And they do fine when they're with me, but when they go to grandparents' house or, we're on a trip or something like that, I mean, it's just like a free for all, right? And then they get the sugars and the this and the that. And so, unfortunately, we're constantly fighting this battle. And, we try to eat at home as much as possible so that I can regulate it. And the great thing is, like, when we eat at home, for the most part, everybody enjoys it. And so, I think it's just really about creating a family culture, and that can be difficult and it does take time. And what I've learned from experience, actually by failure, is you can't force people into it. Like you really have to invite them into it, which is a different approach.
right, right. Yeah, and the first time you get invited, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you usually don't want to come back. So,
Oh, good. So, in the study that you've done, did you find that it confirmed that, the kind of diets we might be participating in really do cause these issues with chronic illness and so forth? So, for instance, I'm told that, inflammation certainly is one of the problems that comes from it. Uh, chronic conditions that, unless we simply stop, are not going to get better. So maybe you have some comments on that.
Yeah, no doubt. It's rare. It is so rare to find a case where someone is unhealthy but has a perfect diet. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. And,
Right.
personally, me, I'm still fighting some health battles, some health issues, and my diet is good. I mean, so there are nuances and there are things, but especially, kind of coming out the gate, if you haven't had an issue before or any kind of treatment or whatever, and you're kind of looking at it going, oh, this is my first time to really evaluate. It's so crazy because I had spent some time in Mexico with my father, and he made it a point to spend, 3 or 4 days eating exactly what I ate and how I
Mm.
ate. Where we were in Mexico, it was really great. We could get lots of really fresh organic food. It was really good. And he was enjoying it. And one day we had gone for a walk. We were walking, and he said, "You know what? Like I feel so much better. Like I have so much more energy."
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And then he kind of answered his own question. He goes, well, isn't that what food is supposed to do? Give you energy? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, so maybe since I usually don't have energy, maybe I'm not eating food.
Mhm.
And it was like this profound statement that he kind of realized in that moment, like this is affecting me. And, he didn't make a permanent change. We're still working on him, but he at least had that revelation.
Yeah.
And what I have found is that in most chronic illnesses, there is always going to be some nutritional component that is contributing to that. It may not have been the cause, but it could be part of the reason you're not seeing a cure.
Right. Okay. So I got a couple of questions here at the different ends of the poll. If we had a Chris Pratt guaranteed not to benefit you list, what rate's highest on that list? In other words, if I'm out there and I'm just Joe Blow, if you told me this was really bad for me and I'm eating it, I should be paying attention. What's the worst culprits?
In my opinion, the worst culprit is white sugar.
White sugar. Okay.
It is not a food, it is literally a toxin. There is no benefit to your body from it. It does so much harm to our bodies. And in fact, studies even show that within like 20 minutes of eating refined processed sugar, it literally infiltrates the bone marrow and causes the bone marrow to tell your immune system to stop.
Hmm.
So you always wonder when a kid eats a whole bunch of sugar and then the next day they have a runny nose. That's
Right.
why. Because literally the sugar told the immune system to shut down. It is literally a poison. So in my opinion, that would be the number one thing I would rid my diet of. And what is scary is it comes in so many forms. Because I said white sugar, but we've got to look at all the different variations like high fructose corn syrup, pure cane sugar, like all these things. It's just refined sugar. And that is the problem. And I just guarantee you, if that's a major part of your diet, which if you're eating processed food, it is because they're sneaking that stuff in there because it's what gives it flavor. Because to
Right.
process food, you've got to take out all the fiber, otherwise it goes bad. And so when you take out the fiber, it now has no flavor. So then you've got to put flavor back in, and the way they do that is through sugar. So it's just this very sneaky thing that they've done. And I'm not even saying maliciously, but it's a market, right? I mean, they've got to make money, and they can't
Right.
make people don't like the way it tastes.
That's true. Okay. And on the reverse side of the equation, what would you regard as, say, the couple of very best things you can do for yourself in realigning to whole foods and so forth? Are there, foods come in different energy densities, I think is the way you put it too. Is like, where can I get the energy density that I need for my life and still have it have a really good, high positive impact. What are your thoughts about that?
That's an interesting one, and that one's really hard because there are so many things that are so beneficial for us. Um, I think one of the most overlooked things that our body really needs are called phytonutrients, and those are the small amount of nutrients. Well, I shouldn't say small amount. They're the nutrients that come specifically from things like fruits and vegetables, but our body doesn't need them in large quantities. But if we have
Mhm.
a diet that is absent of those, our bodies can't function the way that they need to. You know, some people don't know this. They think like, oh, I have to eat my protein, I have to eat my protein. And that is really a gimmick from the energy, like the supplement world. Like you need more protein. You should be eating 80 grams of protein a day. Like, no, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. And then the other thing is like you got to get all your amino acids. You got to get all your amino acids. Your body has the ability to make its own amino acids when it gets the right nutrient compounds. So
Right.
that's one of the things people say, oh, you're a vegan. You eat plant-based. How do you get your protein? I eat plants. And they give me all the protein I need. It's not hard. Like that's just the way the chemicals work in our body. So I think eating a wide variety. And I know this kind of skirts your question because you were like, what's the one or two foods? But what I would say is there's not one or two foods. The key
Okay.
is eating a wide variety of foods so that your body gets all the small things that it needs to function at a high level.
Right. Okay. Well, that's
But
good.
if you were going to narrow it down, I really think like vitamin C is really important. And eating like things like lemon and even like blueberries, things like this, all of these things are going to help so much.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, this is very interesting. So, in this particular discipline and getting the message out, you've created this thing called the healing conspiracy, right?
Right.
And how does that work? Do you bring on other experts like yourself to talk about the various phases of this? Or do you concentrate on what we're doing wrong and how we need to correct? What are you trying, how are you trying to drive this information in the public space?
Yeah. So I did start a podcast called Healing Conspiracy, and my aim with it is really to help advocate for the world of alternative health. And when I say alternative, I don't necessarily mean like the woo-woo weird stuff, right?
Right.
What I mean is that pharmaceuticals and the conventional means of health is not necessarily health.
Mhm.
So I want people to kind of be able to be exposed to testimonials, to stories, and to experts in the field, like you said, that can kind of shift our thinking to say, maybe there are more natural ways, or maybe I haven't gotten the full story. And we talk on the show about everything from nutrition all the way to mental health and some of the issues that occur there, because all of these things are affected by our environments and our lifestyles. And so whenever we approach these things, we have to look very holistically. The problem with conventional medicine, in my opinion, is it doesn't look holistically. It looks at a symptom and tries to fix the symptom. And that's why we
Right.
have to go to 27 specialists because they only know their one symptom and they only know how to fix those things. And really, I say fix, I would probably say more treat. And so, on the podcast, I really am about diving in to looking holistically and then sharing things that maybe people haven't considered before so that
Mhm.
it's an aha moment or I haven't heard of that. So I want to look into it. Really, my heart is to maybe drive people into research and drive people into asking questions. One of the things that I always say is it's not necessarily about the answers, it's about the questions.
Right. Right. Here's something else that I might want to pass on to you. I've come across this new profession coming around with doctors called concierge medicine. And in that, they do some very interesting things. They do a genetic workup, they do the blood workup, and then they start looking at where the imbalances are and use that as the trigger to feed back to, well, your diet's a little deficient here and you're maybe a little over here. So to get, some testing done so that you're not quite so in the blind. Because you
Yeah.
could easily be eating a good diet, but you might have some deficiencies and you might have some oversufficiencies. And I thought that was an interesting approach.
Yeah, and I haven't heard necessarily of it termed that way, but I'm definitely familiar with that idea. And I think that is powerful. And I think it is a good place to start because even in the world of alternative health, I think data is important. And we can't just overlook data and base it all on our feelings, right? I think it's important that we are solid and rooted in facts. And so that's what I am really trying to do as a functional nutritionist is go with
Uh,
what research says, but then at the same time, say what are all the options and what's the best one for you.
right. That's great. I like that. I can never tell simply, how I feel, which part of my diet is responsible, whether it's good or bad. So, I like the fact part.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I think the more you do this, like, just a little brief story of insight. I deal with some nerve pain, and we're not
Yeah.
even sure what the source is, but I have come to understand that even in my very, I wouldn't say rigid diet, but because I eat a lot of different foods, but it's a very specific diet. There are foods that cause my nerve pain to be worse. Like I have learned that grains are more inflammatory. So if I eat grains, I'm more likely to have a nerve
Right.
flare as
Right.
opposed to just eating, raw fruits and vegetables. So anyways, so I definitely think the more you do things like this, the more you get in tune and your body really does start to explain to you what's going on.
Right. Right. Well, this has been great, Chris. You've got some really good points, and I highly recommend people, take a gander at your website, listen into your podcast. I think you've got a lot to offer here. So just before we leave, would you like to just recalibrate how people can reach you or, your website, whatever you want?
Sure, absolutely. So, as far as my podcast goes, it can be found on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, all that kind of stuff. It's on YouTube as well.
Mhm.
If you watch the YouTube channel, there's sometimes other content that's not the podcast, but it's all related as well. So you kind of get those bonus features. It's also on KFred Radio. So there's tons of outlets. It's a great and easy find, just Healing Conspiracy. And then my original brand is called The Plant Adventure, and that's really where I focus on the nutritional things. And that website is theplantadventure.com. So www.theplantadventure.com. On there as well is some opportunities for you to reach out to me. I do free consultations for anyone who's interested in just asking questions or is maybe interested in how a program works. So my calendar's on there. You can just pick a time and we'll spend 30 minutes together, and that'll be a really easy thing. So I would love to meet you, and if you're looking for some advice or some help, I'm here for you.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Chris. It's been a pleasure having you on board.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, sir.
Well, that was certainly interesting. Thank you to our guest today, Chris Pratt. He's got some unique perspectives to bring to bear. And thank you for choosing Vision in Action Live. We know you have other choices. We'd love to have you here. And we hope you got some good insights that you can use. I certainly did. Our future episodes will look at other things like psychology, divorce, renaissance and retirement, psychological profilings, and other expert solutions. So be sure and come back soon and listen in. Our podcasts focus on interviews with subject matter experts and people leading self-directed lives so that you can see exactly what one can accomplish doing personal development. Check out the newsletters, podcast, and extensive reference materials at lifelongfulfillment.com. They are free to you for your use. You'll find us also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and your favorite podcast channel, as well as KFred Internet Radio. Again, I'm Jim Boswell. I'm your host. And until next time, what's your best nutrition looking like? See ya.
Lifelong fulfillment vision.